welcome to China Forum, the DC metro area's preeminent show on modern China. My name is Amanda Conklin, and I will be your host for this special program. Today we are coming to you from the 2015 U.S. China Policy Foundation's Gala at the Mayflower Hotel in downtown Washington, D.C. This year's gala celebrates the 20th anniversary of the U.S. China Policy Foundation. Every year, the gala is attended by prominent China experts and policy practitioners. And at this year's gala, the U.S. China Policy Foundation is pleased to honor former Secretary of Labor Elaine Chao and former head of the Pacific Command, retired Admiral William Fallon. For the remainder of this program, we'll be talking to today's guests about prominent issues that happened in U.S.-China relations over the past year, including President Xi Jinping's state visit to the U.S., the South China Sea disputes, the establishment of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, and more. Hello, I'm here with Ambassador James Sasser, one of USCPF's board members, and you're also co-chair.
That's right.
Tonight's the 20th, or celebrating the 20th anniversary of the U.S. China Policy Foundation. What do you think have been some of its greatest achievements over the past 2 decades?
I think its greatest achievement has been fostering friendship between the Chinese people and the American people. At the time when when the U.S. Policy Foundation came into being, the relations between China and the United States were very poor, and they've increased dramatically during that period of time, and the foundation has played a large role in that, I think. So that's, I think, its finest contribution to the relationship between these two countries, which many people believe, and I believe, is the most important single relationship in the world now between the United States, the #1 economy, and China, the #2 economy.
Hi, I'm here with Congressman Rick Larsen. Congressman Larsen, how is the Hill reacting to China's economic slowdown? China just had its 13th plenum and released new growth targets. What kind of traction is that getting on the Hill?
Well, I think most of the world is envious of economic growth that's over 6%. But in China, being around 6% or 6.5 means something totally different. It means job loss. Slower growth means maybe not providing as much employment to Chinese people. And I think from our perspective in the United States, what that means is lower demand for U.S. products. That confluence of factors could end up becoming an issue with regards to trade between the U.S. and China. I hope that it doesn't. I hope that we recognize that China needs to follow through on its economic reforms for the benefit of its own people, but also I think for the benefit of the rest of the world. I think it's a net positive. So I hope that we can maintain a clear head and just continue to focus on the need for China to continue to go forward in economic reforms.
Hi, I'm here with Michael Wege from the Hershey Foundation, one of tonight's gala sponsors. Mr. Wege, China recently concluded its 13th plenum, and President Xi Jinping made some big announcements there about the progress of economic reform in China. What do you think about the progress of China continuing to open up for foreign businesses to operate there?
The Hershey Company's business in China has been developing nicely over the last decade or so. We're enthusiastic about the continuing reforms that allow the economy to grow and thrive. Obviously, there's some challenges to overcome right now in China, but we think that the current government is very focused on the requirements to overcome those economic challenges, and we continue to be very enthusiastic about the market dynamics and opportunities for our company there.
All right, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy the gala tonight.
Thanks very much.
Hello, I'm here with Dr. Pieter Bottelier, an economist at Johns Hopkins SAIS. Professor Bottelier, the U.S. just concluded long-awaited negotiations for the Trans-Pacific Partnership with 11 other Pacific nations, and there's been talks that China could potentially join this agreement in the future. Could you talk to me a little about what obstacles are in the way for China to do that?
Well, before this becomes a real issue for China, TPP has to be ratified, and that's a rather big obstacle that still stands in the way. Obviously, the U.S. is the most important player here. There is considerable opposition in Congress against it, especially from the Democratic Party. So it's not a done deal. Assuming that it is ratified, then all the others, all 11 will ratify, no question. And in that case, my sense as an economist is that it would be in China's interest to join in a second round. But for China, that is politically complicated, as you know. So at this point, I don't know what's going to happen. I think it would be better for TPP and for the whole world if China were part of that, because China is by far the largest trader, cross-Pacific trader, and to have a TPP without China is in many ways a problem area. But the issue in China itself is essentially a political issue. China has several options. One is, of course, to promote its own FTA AP, which I think would also be a very good idea in the long term, because both Obama and Xi Jinping have approved that in principle when they met in November of last year in Beijing, but that's a long way off. It's at least 8 to 10 years away. So I think in the meantime, China should join TPP. That would be good for China, would be good for everyone.
Hello, I'm here with retired Admiral William Fallon, one of tonight's honorees. Admiral Fallon used to be the head of the Pacific Command, and so I'd like to ask you a question about the South China Sea disputes. The U.S. has recently conducted has begun to conduct a series of freedom of navigation exercises in the South China Sea. Can you talk a little bit about what is the end goal for these exercises and what should the U.S. take into consideration when planning future exercises?
We do, in my old job in the Navy, we did freedom of navigation operations many places around the world. And the purpose of them is to demonstrate that we view the oceans of the world as everyone's opportunity to travel. Everyone should have access to the oceans outside the territorial limits of countries. And there are many, many claims by countries all over the world to areas well beyond their territorial limits. It's our view, the United States view, and our policy that we don't recognize those claims, that we view the open ocean as free for ships of all countries to use. And from time to time, we steam our ships in areas that are sometimes disputed verbally. And we do this solely to demonstrate that we view these ocean areas as the roads of the world, which, if you would, for ships to travel. And they should do so without fear, without being impeded by anyone. So this operation was not done to antagonize China. It wasn't done to some retaliatory tit for tat. When I was the commander, we did these all the time. And we don't make a big deal out of it. We don't announce them. We don't, as you noticed, it was a single ship. And we do these all over the world. So they're not unusual. It's part of a routine assertion of U.S. policy that we view the oceans there for everyone to use. Okay? So the South China Sea, there's some interesting international law aspects. For example, to these artificial islands, if you would, these constructions, they don't carry the same weight as natural islands that would have some claim to a national sovereignty. And so we follow international law. And again, we just try to demonstrate to everyone in a non-confrontational manner that we think all these ocean areas should be open for free transit and free passage.
Do you think the U.S. support for a code of conduct in the South China Sea will see any end results within the coming years?
There was recently, in fact last year, an agreement between the primary naval powers, if you would, in the Western Pacific, and China and the U.S. were prominent. The meeting was actually held in Qingdao in China, and the Western Pacific navies adopted a code, if you would, of behavior. There is international law and precedent for many things, but specifically this code was designed to have a formal structure for actions if ships of the various navies encounter one another on the open ocean without any knowledge. So a ship comes upon another warship, and what do they do? And so this was a code of behaviors, if you would, a structure for what they would follow to give our captains their guidance. I think it's a good step, and if you take that and add it to the international law aspects that most navies adhere to, it should be a step to make sure to try to avoid any kind of conflict in the Western Pacific. It should apply to South China Sea, East China Sea, Yellow Sea, anywhere in the open ocean.
That's a great example of U.S. China putting aside some differences to make a step in the...
U.S. and China were the prominent negotiators to create this agreement.
Thank you so much, Admiral Fallon. We hope you enjoy tonight. The foundation was able to host a dinner in Seattle when President Xi Jinping visited earlier this year. What do you think will be some of the long-term implications of President Xi's visit to the United States?
Well, I think I'm hopeful that the long-term results of that visit are going to be a closer working relationship between China and the United States, and between President Xi and whoever succeeds President Obama as president. We're, I think, at a good stage in our relationship now, where the President of the United States and the President of China regularly have meetings, top-level meetings, state visits back and forth, and that's important. And it's important in developing solid economic relations. It's also important that no misunderstandings develop in the Pacific region between the U.S. and China.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Sasser. We'll let you get back to tonight's gala, and thanks for your service to U.S.-China relations.
Thank you very much.
APEC is happening this week over in Asia, and President Obama is attending, as well as the East Asia Summit next week. What do you hope that President Obama delivers at these summits, or what kind of message do you hope he brings?
Well, I think the message the President is delivering at the APEC Summit is that the United States is part of Asia, that we're a partner there. This is part of the broader rebalance that includes diplomacy, it includes economic engagement, and the President's presence at APEC is partly a continued delivery of that message. I'm really excited to hear he's going to the East Asia Summit. In the early 2000s, I was advocating that the U.S. at least be given some observer status, but we weren't even let inside the room. We had to talk to our friends and allies about it. But now the U.S. is an active participant in the East Asia Summit. It's an important venue for our president to be at, to talk about what the role of the U.S. ought to be in Asia, how we see ourselves, and also to respond to that critical demand signal that our friends and allies in the region, that they want us there, want us part of these Asian-based forums.
Well, thank you, Congressman, for your support of U.S.-China relations and U.S. policy in Asia. We'll let you get back to tonight's gala.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Hello, I'm here with Dr. Nicholas Lardy and Ambassador Solomon. Both of them have a wealth of experience in U.S.-China relations and on modern China. Dr. Lardy, your experience is more on the economic side. And the U.S. recently concluded its long-awaited TPP negotiations with 11 other Pacific nations. And there's been talk of China potentially joining that agreement in the future. What are the obstacles that stand in its way?
Well, there are several. First of all, the TPP, although it's been negotiated, hasn't been ratified. It has to be ratified, and different participants in the 12 countries have different procedures. The U.S. might take the longest. And after the ratification process, then the agreement enters into force. And only after that is there a procedure for considering new members. So if China wanted to enter into negotiations to become a participant, the time to do it would be after the agreement enters into force. So that probably wouldn't be until 2017, maybe even 2018. Now, the main obstacle, or there are many obstacles, but among the most important are the provisions on restricting the activities of state-owned enterprises. The TPP has very strong provisions in this area, and I think the Chinese would have some difficulty in agreeing to the terms. Now, maybe they're going to move ahead with reform of their SOEs over the next couple of years, so this would be less of an obstacle. I would certainly hope that that would be the case, but we'll have to wait and see.
And Ambassador Solomon, as former head of the U.S. Institute of Peace, I'd like to talk with you about one of the longest standing conflicts or lack of peace between China and Taiwan. President Xi recently met President Ma Ying-jeou of Taiwan in Singapore. What do you think are the implications of this meeting for U.S.-China relations?
The Taiwan issue, fortunately, over the past couple decades has evolved in a positive way. And the question is how much pressure will Xi Jinping apply to try to change the situation, presumably to China's benefit. Chairman Mao told Richard Nixon that China could wait 100 years to resolve the issue. But Xi Jinping has said, no, we've got to do something sooner. It shouldn't just be an issue passed on to the next generation. So the meeting between Xi Jinping and Ma Ying-jeou, I think, was a hopeful sign that a dialogue at a political level will evolve. But what's complicating about the situation is that there is a presidential election in Taiwan early next year. And all the evidence or the indications are that the Kuomintang is not going to do very well politically. And the DPP candidate, Ms. Tsai Ing-wen, is probably not going to be as positively inclined to change the situation. Her attitude may well be, well, look, nothing's broke, so don't try to fix it. But Xi Jinping seems anxious to bring about a change. So hopefully we would see things develop on a political track. But as you know, Xi Jinping, and under his leadership, has taken a much more aggressive position on China's claim to territory in the East and South China Sea. Taiwan is part of that area of their front yard, and it would be very unfortunate if things evolved in a confrontational way. So hopefully the Ma-Xi meeting indicates there's a political track that will develop.
Thank you so much, Ambassador Solomon. I hope you enjoy tonight, and thank you for your commitment to U.S.-China relations.
Thank you. Nice to see you.
Hello, I'm here with retired Lieutenant General David Deptula. General, what do you think of President Obama's trip to the East Asia Summit next week? What kind of message do you hope he sends to U.S. allies, partners, and also with China, who we sometimes disagree with?
Well, as you know, it's an enormously important region, particularly to the United States. You're very familiar with the focus on the United States' interest in the area, and interest in the context of being able to assure the freedom of transit in all the domains in the region. I think it's important to reinforce the United States' commitment to all the nations in the region, and that we need to take whatever steps guarantee the freedom of access, whether on the seas, in the air, so that transit and trade can be conducted in a fashion that nobody feels threatened and everyone has access to.
Hey, thank you, General. Since PACOM has committed, or the Department of Defense has committed to conducting future freedom of navigation exercises in the South China Sea, is there anything in particular that PACOM or the U.S. government should take into consideration when planning future exercises?
Well, once again, I think that those exercises reinforce the fact that the United States is committed to freedom of navigation. throughout the region. And we need to develop a relationship with our friends in China to make sure that they understand that and act as partners with us to guarantee that assured passage regardless of what nation elects to move in and out of the region. So I think it's very, very important that the events and the activities that the Pacific Command takes reinforce the whole notion of freedom of the domains.
Thank you, General. Hello, I'm here with Mr. Kailash Pokharel from the Embassy of Nepal. The Embassy of Nepal is one of our honored guests tonight, and we'd love to talk to you about U.S. China-Nepal relations, especially after the earthquake disaster that happened earlier this year. I know both U.S. and China pitched in a lot to disaster relief. Can you talk about where progress on the earthquake set in?
Thank you. Actually, both the countries, China is our neighbor, north side neighbor, and U.S. is our very long-standing, very good partner, always. And both the countries have helped a lot during the earthquake for the rescue, recovery, and now we are on the construction phase. Now they have committed also a huge amount of funds. They are very supportive. Now we are in a process to materialize those commitment to the ground. We are just in the planning stage now. The institutional setup is being made. Now very quickly then we go to the people, and some work is already started. Schools are open temporarily. Kids are going. Health posts are established. But permanently it takes some time to materialize. But both the countries you asked, they're very cooperative, very good.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, that's just an example of one of the ways that U.S. and China can really make a difference when they work towards the same goal. And wish Nepal all the best luck and a speedy recovery, and going forward and having a prosperous, even more prosperous economy. Hi, I'm here with Ambassador Herbert Horowitz, one of the U.S. China Policy Foundation's board members, who's been an integral part of our success. Ambassador Horowitz, what do you think are some of the most significant achievements of the foundation over the past 20 years?
Well, I think the fact that they've been going back and forth here in the United States and in China and trying to create understanding and exchange, which I think is very, very important. And for example, one of the most significant activities has been taking staffers on the Hill and giving them an opportunity to travel to China and get that sort of contact. That's important. So I think that's the most I could say.
Every year, the foundation takes 2 to 3 groups of congressional staffers over to China to give them experience with China's culture, politics, government, academics, and try to bring back some awareness of how China works and help efforts with U.S.-China relations on the Hill. Hello, I'm here with 2 of the U.S. China Policy Foundation's board members, Mr. Donald Anderson and Ambassador James Keith, both former consul generals of Hong Kong. I wanted to ask you, since tonight's the 20th anniversary of the U.S. China Policy Foundation, what do you think have been some of its most significant achievements over the past 2 decades?
Well, I think in particular, Dr. Wang has been so good at understanding what the gaps are between our 2 cultures and creating bridges between the peoples of China and the United States. It's been really phenomenal what he's been able to do with very meager resources to create a really meaningful bridge between the 2 peoples.
Let me just tell you a story.
Okay.
I was in the liaison office in Beijing in
73 to 75.
And a fellow by the name of Dr. Wang Ji showed up, and he was in Beijing to try and set up a relationship with the Peking University. And he did. He succeeded. And he's a terrific accomplishment.
Hello, I'm here with Professor Chi Wang, President and co-chair of the U.S. China Policy Foundation. This year is the U.S. China Policy Foundation's 20th anniversary. Professor Wang, I wanted to ask you, what do you think have been the Foundation's most significant achievements over the past 20 years?
Well, I think if you want me to tell you the most significant achievement, I would say that we have accomplished our educational goal. We want to educate young Chinese American in the United States, understand more about U.S. China relations. And during the past 20 years, every year we have so many young Americans study Chinese, or go to China, study, and come back and work for us as interns, as research assistants, and they learn more about China, and that's our achievement, to educate more young Americans, and like you. Okay, study in China, come back and continue work on China-related issues. That's our achievement. Of course, I'm happy that we have engaged more people from the United States, from government, U.S. Congress, and academic community to work with us together to build a better relation for China-American people. That's our achievement, 20 years. 20 years gone by very fast. It seems to me like yesterday. Okay?
All right, thank you, Professor Wang. I know the Foundation's had a tremendous impact in Washington, D.C. and throughout the lives of many young Americans who are now moving into the government.
Yeah,
So
well, I learned a lot from other members from the Foundation, our board members. Yeah, that's just, I think we have done a lot. We're a small foundation. We're not big, but we are doing the same thing like other foundations, organizations.
thank you to everyone who joined us to celebrate the U.S. China Policy Foundation's 20th anniversary. And thank you to all the sponsors who made this year's gala possible. The U.S. China Policy Foundation's annual gala helps provide support to China Forum and the U.S. China Policy Foundation's other educational activities throughout the year. You can see pictures of tonight's gala and find out more information at www.uscpf.org. We hope you were able to gain some interesting insights from our distinguished guests today, and we hope to see you again next time on China Forum.